sneak into the bathroom to read it because I was too young to read it. But I was very in awe to realise that she worked for Jackie. But amongst her career highlights, her career has spanned DC Thomson, Jackie Magazine, Radio Clyde, the Glasgow Evening Times, The Sun and TVS Kent. In 2012, she was awarded an honorary degree here at the University of Glasgow. And in October 2014, she celebrated 25 years of working on Reporting Scotland, which makes her the longest serving newsreader, is that right, on the programme? And for me personally, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, the best smile on TV, definitely. So Jackie, you are very, very welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So what we'll do is I have a few questions here just to get the ball rolling, but I'm sure you will all have things that you want to ask Jackie, so I won't hog her time. I'll get the conversation started for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll pass over to you guys to ask whatever questions you want to ask. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, and I heard you sort of giving your little bit of careers advice there, which kind of ties in with this. So there's a theory of careers thinking called planned happenstance. And what planned happenstance is that you...
Again,
planned happenstance.
What does that mean?
So what planned happenstance is that as an individual, you put the feelers out and you talk to people, you network with them, you have chats. And the point of it is to create opportunities for yourself. So it gives you the ability to capitalise on chance events and turn serendipity into opportunity.
Right, okay.
Does that resonate with you when you think back over your career?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's probably a reworking of another phrase that I'm more familiar with, which is the harder you work, the luckier you get. I think that came from... it's been attributed to lots of sportsmen, Tony Jacklin, golfer over the years. But it's one of those things as, yeah, there is luck that just comes along on its own. But if you work hard and create those opportunities, the networking, the whatever, then, yeah, you are enhancing your chances of one of the lines that you've thrown out coming good.
Can you think of any times when that has happened with you?
I'm afraid, firstly, can I say that being asked questions is anathema to a journalist. I just feel so uncomfortable, so fraudulent, because you've been telling me the people that you've had here who've actually achieved great things. I've achieved sustainability, which I suppose is okay in this day and age, but nothing great. That's still to come. So where I've used that, well, I mean, I do a talk for much younger people at school, and this resonates, where I take my Reporting Scotland, which is the news programme I present, and how I got that job, and I turn that into a little talk. But I can précis it down into 30 seconds, and it's a good example of how I've lived my working life. I applied for a job on Reporting Scotland, which in the days before the fragmentation of media was the premier news broadcast. I would still say it still is in Scotland. I applied 5-6 times, and each time was told no. So my first application was when I was 16, which was very stupid. But there's a bit of naive self-belief there. I just left school and got in touch with the boss and met him, and he kindly met me, and this is something to bear in mind if any of you, and I know that not all of you want to go into journalism, but in the creative industries, a lot of the people in power who can give you work are mavericks, and they like mavericks. So they like the nutty approaches. They like the idea of a 16-year-old girl who hasn't a chance getting in touch with them. They like the chutzpah of that. So I just tossed that out as an aside. So I applied for it, and he said no. He said, go and get yourself some journalism experience. So I did. And I got myself into magazines. And then I came back and I said, can I be in Reporting Scotland? And I was 18. He said, no, go and get yourself some more. So I got onto news and radio. I came back to him, can I be reporting? No. go and get yourself some more experience. So I went into television. I wrote to every television station in the country and said, I will come and work for free. And only one said, yes, you can. I'd worked for newspapers by then. And I went there, I got some experience. And I went back to him, I said, can I be a journalist? And he said, we'll give you an audition as a reporter. And I was rubbish. And he said, go away. And then I tried again. And eventually, maybe 5, 6, 7, it could have been more. And I got the job. So that's maybe you try, and you try, and you try again, and you have a naive self-belief.
I liked that term that you just used there, the fragmentation of media. So obviously you've had, as you say, a longevity of a career in media. What does that mean for people wanting to move into the media as a career? So like people at this stage wanting to move into it. What does that fragmentation mean for them?
It means, I presume now, greater opportunities, really. Because there was only, in Scotland, border television, reporting Scotland, whatever. And I'm talking specifically television news here, but just using that as an example. So now there are many more outlets for news. But I'm reassessing this as I speak, because there were also many, many local papers in which to get a foothold, and there are fewer now. Yeah. Another thing I want to say at this point, I was just driving in thinking things I want to convey. We all want lots of things out of life. Some of us want to be creatively satisfied, and that's all that matters, and others want to find the truth, and others want to do that, and others want materialistic things, and others want a great life. If you want money, forget journalism. Because that's something that the fragmentation, because because it's seen as such a glamorous stroke, rewarding, and it is, existence, and diverse and exciting, where the next day you don't know what you're going to do the next day, which is great in a job. So many people want to do it, and therefore people can offer what they like, because they'll never be short of applicants. So that's just something to put in your back pocket as well. If it matters to you to earn lots of money and have a great standard of living, only a very, very, very few achieve that. But if that doesn't matter so much, and you want the satisfaction of the job, and that matters more than anything, then fill your boots.
Yeah, so I think you've touched there on some of the challenges. What other challenges do you think there are of young people going into a media career?
Challenges? I think it's the same as any career, lots of challenges. I think the number one is potentially the one that I've just mentioned. The fact that it's seen as such a great career. There's lots of opposition. So if you want to be a brain surgeon, there are a few of you equipped to be a brain surgeon. But the thing about the creative industries, you needn't be a great brain, you just got to have something that's special, that spark, to I think enjoy it and be fulfilled by it, and therefore it's seen as something exciting, as I've said, and it's actually numbers. That's possibly the biggest challenge. You're up against lots and lots of people with the same aim.
If you think about the people that you've worked with over the years, and the people that have that sort of chutzpah and the little spark, what strengths do you think they particularly have?
I don't know. It comes down to the trying hard thing. Now that is not to say that if you're in another walk of life or another career, you don't try hard. My husband is one of the brainiest men I know, the brainiest people I know. Oxbridge graduate, just great brain, and is in a very different career path from mine. He's in sort of financial services, and he wears a suit, it's very staid and whatever, but he's incredibly brainy. If we go to, say, a shop that we've read about on the internet and we want to see if the shop's open, he will go and knock the door, and if it's not open, he'll say, let's go away now. I will knock the door for half an hour. I will go round the back. I will try and find the owner. I will go to the neighbours. You know, if we've travelled, say, to a gallery that we want to see, I'll find the neighbours. I'll see if the person who owns the gallery lives nearby. Maybe they'll open it for us. Maybe they want to. And it's that sort of thinking, not going head on at things, going round the corner, going back, and not taking no for an answer. Does that make sense?
So I have one more question that I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to hand over to the students. Especially from a female point of view, but it's I know asking from a female point of view, but it applies to everybody in the audience. Have you sought out mentors throughout your career, and who were they, and what did they do for you?
Have I sought out mentors? The answer to that is probably no. It's actually been people. It's been bosses. Two notable bosses. One who was an absolute maverick called Alex Dixon, who worked in Radio Clyde, who did things in those days that you can't do now because of work practices, and I hear careers. Who basically, when I was desperate to be a news presenter after being a reporter for many years on the radio, would tell me, you're rubbish. You're rubbish, your voice is rubbish. I come from a working class background. I had a very working class voice. Now, nothing wrong with working class voices, but when you are broadcasting and you want people to wide range of people understanding what you're saying, I spoke slang. I hadn't the maturity to know that you had to round off your vowels, not to be posh, just to make sure you were a good, clear broadcaster. And I would come to him and he would say no, but because I wanted to change my voice, because I wanted to succeed, he would say, go away and make me tapes. So I would make tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes, and every Friday he would spend an hour or two working on my voice, working on my presentation, working on my journalism skills. And that happened in another place I worked too. So if you find someone like that you know believes in you and who has skills to impart, then they're worth their weight in gold.
He obviously saw something in you, though. He didn't do that out of, purely the goodness of his heart, So he's obviously seen something in you that he wanted to nurture. I mean, how did you build that relationship?
He didn't see immense talent because I had none, and I still have none. What I have and what you have as a journalist, in my case, there are many journalists that are supremely intelligent at deep levels. You have to have this enormous breadth of intelligence, but it's quite thin because you have to be able to know a little bit about a lot of things. So he saw that, but he also saw the ability to work hard. And I know it's not profound what I'm passing on, but lots of people these days are clock watchers, and young and old. And what he saw was, I would do a morning shift and my friend and I, because we worked together on this, we would start, we still laugh, we would leave the house at 5, we'd start at 6, we'd finish our shift at 3. And he would offer us a radio programme to do in the afternoon. He said, oh, by the way, I'll offer you a radio programme, but I won't pay you, and you have to do it in your own time. And we'd leave there at midnight, and we'd go back and we'd have 4 hours sleep. And it sounds nuts. And was it exploitation? Yes, it probably was exploitation. But there was a quid pro quo. I got his advice, he taught me, and I worked my butt off. And that's how it works. So, apart from not wanting to make any money, if you want to go into media, if you're a 9-to-5er, then it's perhaps not the best career.
Rethink that one. Okay, so as I've said, I don't want to hog all of your time and your advice. So has anybody got a question they'd like to ask Jackie?
When you were applying for the reporting job in Scotland,
yes.
And you obviously said you applied like 6 times or more.
Yes.
I wanted to ask where you got the motivation from to keep applying, and how did you sustain this motivation? How did you not decide, okay, my other job is going quite well, I might stay in newspapers or whatever. Why did you keep on applying to that job?
Why? Because I wanted it. How? Was this bizarre self-belief. You have to have a self-belief because if you don't, no one else is going to believe in you. So yes, if you get turned down for something, or if you fail an exam, well, maybe not fail an exam, because then you go back and you work extra hard, but if someone, and remember, a lot of it's subjective. They might not like you because they don't like your nose, they don't like your accent, they don't like how you sat in the chair, they don't like how you walked into the room. And again, it comes down to that other thing. It's amazing how lucky you get if you practice. Well, it's amazing how many opportunities you get if you throw out lots and lots of lines, and one will come back with a great big fish on it eventually. I can almost promise you that, but you have to have that self-belief. Yeah, self-belief. God, I wish I could think of something more profound.
Over here.
Thanks. Firstly, I want to say, like, I grew up in Aberdeenshire, and you were always on my telly, so I'm like kind of fangirling right now. But I wanted to ask, do you find it difficult to stay impartial when you're reporting on things on the news, particularly on the BBC, when you have to kind of show both sides of it?
Yes, I think as a human being, you have difficulty because as a living, thinking human being, you have very strong views on things. But although the BBC has come and has always come in for lots and lots of criticism, I would stand in front of a firing squad and to my last breath say there is no other organisation that tries harder to be impartial than the BBC. The hoops we jump through is extraordinary, internally and externally. So on a personal level, is it hard? Yes, it's hard. But I would like to think, and why I've sustained, is that I've achieved that impartiality. And you just have to keep believing that. Again, self-doubt, go away.
Couple down the back here.
God, I feel terrible talking at you.
I was just going to say, obviously being an anchor is quite a different kettle of fish from being a reporter, and I was just wondering whether, you're sitting there presenting the news every night, do you feel like you have enough sort of creative freedom to actually
Good question.
or is a lot of stuff sort of scripted, or do you miss being a reporter?
Good question. Yes, you do, which is why, and I have to phrase this very, very carefully. We like nothing better than a big story, but the awful thing is big stories are rarely happy events. So when a big story comes, or when something changes mid-show, that's when your years of experience of being a reporter come into being and help. So do I miss being a reporter? No, because you're out in the rain in Scotland and you're out in the freezing cold. I've been there, I've done it. In terms of the creativity, I'm fortunate enough that every quarter or every now and then I'm allowed to go off and make a programme. So I'm allowed to go, I was in Afghanistan 4 times, I was embedded with the Royal Marines. That was hell. All those hunky Marines sharing the shower block. You have to work for your art. Anyway, I'm sure they didn't feel the same, but I was lucky enough to be in Afghanistan, things like that. I was lucky enough to travel. So if there's a big story, whenever Lockerbie happened, I was lucky enough to go over and try to get the American point of view there. I've done historical documentaries about the Korean War, and been able to go there. So I'm very lucky. Even the dreadful bin lorry tragedy of a couple of years, I was fortunate enough to have a relationship with the families who had not spoken before, and to dig deeper into the background of that awful event. And I would say that's another thing, if any of you are interested in reporting and in the media, you have to have an honesty, you have to have a truth. And one of my one of my attributes is speaking to people who have been through the mill and getting them to talk to me. And I hope that is because I am honest with them and real. We've all seen the caricatures of journalists who are smarmy and want to get in someone's life and want them to, because you're asking them to reveal things and talk to you and share often traumas with you. And if you're honest with them, they're honest with you. And that's not just in news, that's in documentary making. So if any of you want to go into long form television, that's something you have to have, an honesty and an integrity, because you can see false integrity like that and people can see it. So there are some times when I'm just reading out loud as I tell people what my job is. In the main, I read out loud. I mean, I work on my scripts at night and I change the scripts and I have a certain amount of editorial control. But yes, it's nice every now and then for my sanity to go off and do something that requires more in-depth work and more time, whereas I stay with it for maybe 3 or 4 months.
First of all, thank you for coming to speak with us today. My question is more about media and journalism in general.
Yep.
I lived in the United States for about 10 years, and currently there's big distrust in a lot of news media in the US, but the BBC has the trust of the public. And I was wondering what you think the difference is between US media and British media, and why, if it's something in the behind-the-scenes processes or in the execution, what is it that the BBC does, or the British media does, that differentiates it from US media?
It is behind-the-scenes processes, as I said. Everything we do is questioned. You know, there's a program, I don't know if you've seen it, W1A, about the BBC. It's not a comedy, it's a documentary. It is real life, I have to say. But one of the parts of that that they touch on is the levels of bureaucracy. So if you are dealing with a subject matter that is open to criticism, whether it's legally or personally, whatever, you have to go through hoops. I can't tell you how hard you have to justify every word of narrative. I mean, every word of a documentary, of a 30-minute documentary, is that thick when it's written down. You have to go through it with your seniors, with the lawyers, with whatever, to justify it. And do things slip through the net? They must do. Of course they do. We are human. But my God, we try. We try. And maybe that is it. Maybe that's the reason.
I was just wondering from over the career, what you've reported on subject matter-wise that you've enjoyed the most?
Oh, good question. I've enjoyed the most. Wow. That's such a good question, because they're all. I enjoy giving a voice, and that's what you can do in the media, because you have the power to give a voice to people who are not heard. So in, for example, the documentary on the bin lorry, we were able to give a voice to the relatives who were not happy with how things had progressed. We gave them that voice. And I think when you do that, that is very, very satisfying. Yes.
Hi, I just want to say as well, I'm from Aberdeenshire as well, and me and my mum are biggest fans.
Thank you.
And you're actually one of the reasons why I want to pursue a career in journalism.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I've been watching you since I was little.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, when in the past or still present, when you get nervous for if there's like a big story or
Yes.
an interview or something, how do you channel those nerves, or what do you do to overcome them?
You do get nervous. People ask if I get nervous when I do Reporting Scotland. No, I don't, because you do that all the time and it's like falling off a log. If you are doing something that is out with your skill set, for example, there was the Queen was up here during the Jubilee, whatever. They asked me to host a 3-hour programme which dipped in and out of her going to Glasgow Cathedral, and I had to chat to some historians, and then I had to throw to someone else, so you were anchoring it. And it's not something that I do on a regular basis, so nerves. Nerves are good. You raise your game. Nerves are good. Too many nerves, bad. Preparation. You just have to prepare and prepare and prepare and prepare. So you know that if something awful happens and you lose all the lines to all the outside broadcasts, you have prepared enough. So you have to prepare. Prepare to fail to prepare to fail. It's all of the cliches are only cliches because they're so relevant. They're so true. The other thing that I would suggest, and I don't often follow my own advice, sadly, is if you ever find yourselves in a public speaking platform, or if you have to make a presentation, anything like that, just slow things down, like I'm doing now, because you give yourself time to think. So if you hear me on an outside broadcast and I suddenly slow down, it's because all hell is breaking loose in my earpiece and I haven't a clue where to go to next. But people at home think, oh, she has gravitas. She's thinking. No, she's terrified. So that's a little tip. Thank you.
Actually, it's like a combination of many questions. So it's like how to knock on the first job in the media. Because I mean like generic, like not generic, but it's really true advice I got. It's like, oh, write something. And it's like, I got this kind of like timidity or like nervous about like, not writing something. It's like I'm not actually like native speaker. So it's like English my second language. So it's like, oh, it's like I got so nervous. I don't know what I'm going to write or what I'm going to. Yeah, we just like got all this kind of shaking feeling about it. To go actually make the first step. Do you have any advice on that?
And what is it you want to do? What have you tried, or are you going to try?
I'm going to try.
Okay. And what are you going to try? Give us an idea, roughly.
Yeah, I don't know. Present or something like.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you say English is my second, is my second language, I'm envious. That's fantastic. I have one, and I barely do that properly sometimes. That is so you immediately have an advantage over so many people. Just look at the areas that you think you are weak in. You have a language which is your native language, which is fantastic. If your other language skills you think let you down or you get nervous, then you have to work on them, but in bite-sized chunks. You can't do it all at once. Talking of language, and I just throw this into the mix to say you may have things in your life that you think hold you back. I had my job seems all the more bizarre now, in that I had a stammer, an atrocious stammer, since I was a child. And I was taken out of school throughout my primary school years for 1 day a week for speech therapy because I couldn't speak. And the more nervous I became, my speech got worse. Right through secondary school, so when I sat my French higher, I had to have a speech therapist who had to assess me. And when I did my oral, she had to write a letter saying the hesitations here are not because she doesn't know the words, it's because she has a terrible stammer. Now, women with stammer becomes broadcaster. Duh. But I thought, well, I can overcome this. God knows where that self-belief came from. But whatever is holding you back, you can overcome it if you just do it bit by bit. Perhaps you're trying to do too much too soon. So if you're writing letters, for example, and I have no doubt when you've got the time to think about the letters you're writing in English, they are probably far more astute than if you try to speak, because you're getting nervous. And then make those letters memorable. It's that maverick approach again, and work to your strengths. A lot of television presenters, especially women, are very attractive. Sadly, I am no great beauty, but I overcame that by working very hard and having a little bit of a maverick about me. Maybe crossing the line sometimes in my relationship with the audience, being a bit warm. So if you have anything you think could potentially be a drawback and you can't overcome it, work on your other strengths. But the fact that you've got 2 languages is remarkable and will open in journalism, especially now, so many doors. So it's an attribute. That's my sob story about my stammer.
This is maybe some works maybe enter the written press,
Mm-hmm.
journalists like that. And I was thinking, you said you worked in there when you first started off.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, like, I know it's changed a bit now, obviously, it's on
Mm-hmm.
social media. Is there any recommendations for entering into that field? And like, also, did you enjoy it? How much did you enjoy it? And is there any like similarities or massive differences between what you do now and that?
At the print media, I worked for the Evening Times in Glasgow, which I'm glad to say is still around. Newspaper reporting is great. It's everything you see on the telly. For an evening newspaper, you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're at your desk for 5:30. There's been a car crash the night before. You're out there and you're trying to get more. There's been a robbery. It's great. It's absolutely fantastic. Sadly, online means newspapers are struggling. There are fewer jobs. A lot of the jobs you're desk based. So you're getting the copy that you get from PA. So there are fewer jobs for the old-fashioned idea of the reporter, but they're still out there. In terms of getting in, what I would say is go and introduce yourself to the editor. I mean, write a letter to him and say, I would love to come in and see how it works. And they do tend to be nice people because they have done what you are trying to do. Go in, see him or her, and then say, look, are there any times when you're particularly busy, when you need someone to go and collate the sports reports or do whatever they do now, and offer to go in. Make yourself known. So, sorry, what's your name? Ben. So he will remember, that Ben guy, God, yeah, he's making a nuisance of himself. Okay, we'll get him in to do something. It's foot in the door stuff. As I said in my career, my sage career advice, kick down doors. Either a foot in the door or attempt to kick it down. Because you are young, and if you do things like that, it's less attractive when you're my age. But when you're young, people like that youthful enthusiasm, and you can get away with making a pest of yourself. You can get away with that and make sure they remember you. Because it seems so fundamental to say make a pest of yourself and make yourself known that you think, well, why isn't everyone doing it? Well, they don't. They either can't be bothered or they're so full of their own self-importance that they can't be bothered. And I bet you are not the only people in this university that would really like a career in media. But you're the only people that are bothered to turn up. Mm-hmm. Or the people here who can't because they have very good reasons. But what I'm saying is, you can't imagine how many people think, I could do that, but I can't be arsed. Excuse my language. Okay? So the fact that you do that gives you a huge advantage over the many, many people who didn't.
You mentioned earlier that you had a stammer and
Yes.
you couldn't talk and
Yes.
your speech is just perfect. I wanted to ask how you overcame it, how long it took you to improve your speech, and what advice you would give to someone who wants to improve their spoken English.
I still have a stammer. You always have a stammer. I hide it. So whenever I have to... This is really boring. Whenever I am speaking and I know that there is a word coming up that has a hard consonant, that I can't say, I say consonant. So I have a stammer. I've always had it. I will have a stammer, but you can overcome it. You just work on yourself. You work on your breathing. You work on your pace. So if you want to go into broadcast journalism and you don't like your accent, or you don't think it's good enough, find someone on television or radio that you admire. Listen to them. Watch them. I've not tried to mimic them, but think of what you like about them. Is it the tone? Is it the pace? Is it how they have a little, how they have a maverick, again that word, how they have a, how they have an unusual phrasing or approach. I worked with a chap called Eddie Mayer, who's now in Radio 4, and he has a very dry sense of humour and a dry delivery and a flat delivery. And he comes across as extremely authoritative, and he's got gravitas, but he has a different delivery from, say, a John Humphreys or someone else. So find someone you admire and try to learn from them.
With so much legislation governing the media just now, how has that changed from the beginning of your career with the media's role as a public watchdog?
Be specific on the legislation you're thinking about.
For example, there's current reforms to whistleblowing legislation, which is impacting on journalists, a lot of what they can say. So basically, with legislation such as that, which didn't exist probably when you started your career, do you feel that is poaching upon our right to receive information, but also your right as a journalist to impart it upon us?
It's more difficult now because in certain areas the legislation works to your disadvantage if you're trying to get a story. But in other ways, freedom of information, you could say that it's been enhanced. At the end of the day, if you have a strong story that is in the public interest, that you believe in, and you can convince those layers of editorial bureaucracy and the lawyers that it is worthwhile, you can get it out there. And I would also say that, okay, maybe the legislation is wrapping your journalistic creativity a little bit more tightly, but the internet is also allowing other ways of getting information out there. And when information gains a momentum, nothing can really stop it. So, swings and roundabouts. Lost a few opportunities, but gained a few opportunities. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Sorry, many questions. What would you say was your main challenge as a journalist? Like the main thing journalists struggle with, and how would you overcome it?
It's a very broad question. It all really depends on what area you're in.
I mean, for yourself, what you thought was the greatest challenge in your career, and how did you overcome it?
Getting a job and holding on to it, really. Lots of people want your job. You just have to make sure that you are constantly doing your best to remain the best person for the job in the eyes of those who can. So don't rest on your laurels. There you go. Don't rest on your
Hello. I think we all admire how you have contributed to media throughout your career, and we hear about all the milestones, all like the accomplishments that you've achieved. But then we don't get to hear a lot about like the disappointments, the failures, and so just out of curiosity, was there one time throughout your career that you experienced embarrassment, and how did you recover it and reflect on it the next day?
Good question. Well, I many years ago, 2001, 2000, I present the Hogmanay show, and I went out with my girlfriends, two of them, whose names will never be forgotten, and I tried on an outfit for Hogmanay. And I thought I looked the bee's knees. I was looking hot. So I wore the outfit to Hogmanay. And it wasn't hot, and I wasn't hot, and I'm fairly slim, and it looked ridiculous. It looked ridiculous. Now, we've all worn something. Have you all worn something and you looked at pictures and you've gone, oh, why did I do this? So, however, you've probably done this in a night out with your friends, not on primetime television, on the most watched television program of the year. And the newspapers went nuts. I was front page of the newspapers. The woman who ruined Hogmanay. People writing in saying, she made me sick. She made me feel physically ill. I thought, that's a bit much. But it was hideous. And I was humiliated. It was 17 years ago. So online wasn't, God, online, gee whiz. I wonder what would have happened then. And I was crushed. Because when I stepped out of the house and went to the newsagents, people were, and I felt crushed. And I made it all about me for a few days. And then I read something in a newspaper about what had happened on the same night to a couple in the south of England, this means nothing to anyone, whose car had fallen off a cliff. They had been there for a romantic and they died. And I thought, that's a Hogmanay tragedy. That's something hideous. You being a laughing stock is not hideous. It's not. Get over yourself. So I did after dinner speaking, and I reworked what had happened to me into part of my after dinner speaking. And I got some great jokes about myself, and about the show, and about my frock, and about the top and everything. And then I auctioned it for charity for children in need. And one of my co-presenters, a man, wore it and looked better in it than I did. And I made fun of it, and I made fun of myself. So, yeah, I wallowed in the hurt, and then I picked myself up. But it was hideously embarrassing.
I remember that, and they were rough.
Oh.
They were really rough.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
I'm not a journalist myself, but one of the most interesting chats that I heard recently, but I'm curious just to find out a little bit more about his persistence and practice and needing to be the best that started when you were 13, 14, 15 years old. So what do you think was the trigger that created this need in you to go to the BBC or BBC Scotland and try again and again? You didn't mention any mentors as such.
No.
So what was this trigger?
It's parents. Do you have parents who believe in you, really believe in you? Who outrageously believe in you? Oh, you're the cleverest. Oh, even when you are looking like a dog, the parents who say, oh, aren't you lovely? Actually, I'm not. But it's that. It's people who believe in you, really. It's the parents. It's surrounding yourself with friends now. Surrounding yourself with good people now. Friends who believe in you. And you believe in them. And if you have that quid pro quo going on, then you give each other strength. But where mine came from was undoubtedly my parents. My father left school at 14 because of illness, was a school janitor. My mother's a cleaner. And they just believed in me. They thought I could do anything. They told me I could do anything. And I just grew up, and it wasn't until I was very much older I thought, I'm not that talented, but shh, don't tell anyone. So yeah, it's that simple.
Right, it's just kind of linked on a couple of questions that were already been asked. You're talking about, especially with written media now, you're losing that opportunity to create the content you want to. So would you say it's almost more important to get that ability to present it onto the camera if you want to go for the original content that is actually quite exciting?
I want to be clear on what you're asking. Say it again, reword it and tell me. No, because I'm particularly thick because I had a cold yesterday, so explain that again. Just because I want to give you a proper answer to your proper question.
Yeah, so obviously with written media, it's quite difficult. You're now just having to do press releases that are online.
Okay.
whenever you're presenting in front of a camera, you have this opportunity, and maybe the way I'm viewing it is that you have an opportunity to present what you want to say and not what the press release says. Is there may be more of an opportunity now to do that compared to the written media if you want to create the exciting content?
No, I would say no. I would say that in terms of the diminution of the media, of the written media, it's harder. You said a word there that when I was driving in, I said to myself, I cannot forget this word. I have to impart this word to you and make sure you get it in there. Content. Content is king in the media. If you take nothing away from this, you take away content is king. Content in the creative industries will give you freedom, an idea, a great story, an idea for a program if you want to work in television and things like that, content. So if you get a story that is great, and if you work so hard to get a range of contacts who feed you stories and you get stories yourself, you will get a job, because content is king. Regardless of what technology does. Technology can disappear up its own bahookie for all I know. I don't know. But content is king. All the platforms, whether they're television programs, whether they're online, whether they're YouTube stuff, whether wherever, they need content. And if you can come up with that content, be it a story, be it a program idea, be it a written work, be it a book, be it whatever, content is king. And it will free you. At one stage in my career, although I've been in Reporting Scotland forever, again, it's that answer to your question in terms of being creative. There are times where I wasn't given the opportunity to have a documentary or whatever. The documentaries that I've mentioned to you, I came up with those ideas, and they freed me for a while from the day job. And I remember doing a program that I'd been asked to do on the radio many years ago, and an old journalist friend of mine came to see it because it had an audience. And he said to me, "Why are you doing this pile of nonsense?" He didn't quite say nonsense. and I said, "Because they offered me it." And he said, "But it's terrible, it's embarrassing." And I said, "Yeah, I know, but they offered me it." He said, "Well, get out and make something yourself." So I went home and I thought, okay, what will I do? And I spent years writing a sitcom. And I wrote a sitcom. And when I say I wrote a sitcom, that afternoon, sitcom was done. It took 3 years to write the sitcom. And I worked so hard on it, I sent it to a place that, anonymously. I was lucky enough to get it picked up. And who's that wonderful woman? I can never remember her name. She is the doctor. She was the Doctor Who's nemesis. She's a Scottish actress. In the last series. Do you remember her name? She was in Green Wing and things like that, which is a long time ago, yeah? Anyway, great actress, pick of parts. She saw it. She got the script and she said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So she came up to Scotland and she did it. And I felt, maybe that should have been another answer, when I felt really happy with something, apart from the answer I gave, I had created a 6-part sitcom that she starred in. And I was pleased with it because I had created it. God, this is all me. But you know what I mean? I am trying to pass on lessons, hopefully, rather than just be verbose about my career. Yeah, so content, sorry, to get back to it. Content is king. Content is king. If you have an idea, you do it. You use it. Don't sit there and think, "I'll do it one day." In fact, you know what? And I will promise you this right now. I was listening to the radio this morning and I was listening to someone who'd written another sitcom. And this was maybe 7 years ago I wrote that sitcom. And I'm in a bit of a fallow period at the moment. I said, I'm going to write another. And I promise you I'm now going to go and write another. Right? Which is another 4 or 5 years. And it's hard work. It's back-breaking work. Writing, being creative like that is back-breaking, but it's worth it in the end. And I've decided right now that I've got another mountain to climb and I'm going to do that.
in general, and especially when kind of writing the script for the evening's news, how autonomous is the BBC still from things like governmental pressures and the need to produce a kind of a good show and good ratings, or does that really not come into it as much as one might think?
No, you have to. No, there are times when, as soon as the program ends, the heads, the spin doctors, for want of a better word, are on the phone sometimes saying that was unfair, that was wrong. Now, if it was wrong, that's bad. If they deemed it to be unfair, we investigate. Surprisingly, it's not in the majority of occasions, but it's eagle eyes. Everyone's a judge, which makes it harder, obviously from our point of view, as it should be, because we're in a position of power. In terms of government interference, I wish it was, no. I can honestly say no.
Could we maybe take another, who else wants to ask a question, because we're coming up on our time. So let me see, how many more questions have we got? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Who hasn't asked a question yet? You. Did you ask a question already? Yeah, did you ask a question already?
How about I make my answers really brief?
Okay,
and then we get as many
right.
in as we can. Right, okay. I'll stop with some verbose.
Thank you so much. I think it sounds like you've had a very inspiring career, especially going to Afghanistan. I'm quite curious. So if you could do any story you want in the next year, currently I'm fascinated by Blue Planet, raising awareness about climate change. I'm a bit nervous. Climate change. Dr. Foster with the mental health. I think that these are incredible messages that they're sending. And yeah, what would you send? One message that so many people listen to you. In the next year, what story would you give?
Oh,
sorry.
A story?
Well, a message like climate change or mental health, or what do you think is the most important message to send? Is that too big?
No, it's a good question.
I just think this Blue Planet, Dr. Foster, the power of the BBC's message is incredible. Some of the best in the world, and I think that as an ambassador for the world, I think that the BBC can really make people change and really make people do good things for what society needs in this day and age.
This isn't a message that I have, but it's just I think we should all stop navel gazing. I think the internet has been brilliant, and you probably can't remember a time without it, but it hasn't come without its problems. And I think it's caused a lot of us to look internally rather than externally. The minutiae of life, the nitpicking, the bile. I wish we could put a stop to that, to the nastiness, because I think there are far greater things, whether it's mental health, whether it's the planet, whether it's the environment, that we should be dealing with. And I think too many people are dealing with the minutiae of their lives and each other's. And the internet, is a bit of a cauldron's the wrong metaphor. It ferments a lot of that, and I don't think it's to the greater good. So I'd like us to, right, we have the internet, that's fine, nothing to see here, move on. Use it for which it was intended, for us to look outwards and not looking so much, and not having so much navel gazing, if that makes sense.
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Here.
Hi. Yeah, just you were mentioning there that you were going to do your sitcom, and this is my next mountain that you were going to climb.
That's it.
Something that I always find hard is I give myself 3,000 mountains at one time.
Yes.
And especially someone in your position, you've got so much opportunity to climb so many mountains. How do you pick just one?
That's a great question. Right. Yeah, I bet, because you're all here, because I think you're all sort of similar type of people, you're probably buzzing with ideas. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And that's great, and that's why you are like you are, but it can also be a disadvantage, because you are, You have too many ideas. You have to choose one. It might be the wrong one, but choose one. What is it whenever they ask authors for the great advice? How am I going to write the greatest novel? How am I going to write a bestseller? And they say, sit your bum down on a chair and write. Doesn't matter what you're writing, write. So choose one thing. Scattergun. It's a scattergun approach. Don't have a scattergun approach. Yeah, have all the ideas, but at one stage give yourself a deadline, just like I've done, to say, right, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on it. Because that scattergun approach can also give you an excuse if you don't succeed. Oh, I had too many things going on at the one time. Well, who chose all the too many things to do? Do one thing at a time and do it well. That's if you're doing a project. But in terms of your careers, when you're looking for career advancement, remember what I said, throw out lots of lines, and keep trying and keep kicking down doors. Anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, this is possibly a bit technical, but I was wondering if there's a certain kind of degree that they look for when they're when people are applying for a job at the BBC. For example, I'm studying zoology.
Yep.
And I thought maybe that's a bit too sciencey to get a
No.
journalism or something like that.
You're here in university because you are, if you want to be a doctor, then you're doing medicine. But generally, you're here to learn to think. And any degree that teaches you how to think, how to rationalize, sometimes how to argue, that's great. So no, there is no degree. Usually, the people that sit around my desk, the numbers of degrees are phenomenal, bizarre. No, it doesn't matter. No, it's a great degree.
Just quick, is this one? What would be, you said quite a few cliches like
Yep.
prepare to fail, fail to prepare. What would be your one life quote that you would give to us? Advice or
Kick down doors. Kick down doors. That's it. Anyone else?
Okay, I think we'll finish up there. So basically, I'm going back to the office and I'm telling my boss that I'm going to kick down the door. I'm going to be a maverick from here on in.
Yeah.
I don't know what she'll make of that because she's already got the pink hair. And but lots of I joke, but there was lots of lovely things there. And one of the things that I loved that you said, and I think is really, really true, is to surround yourself with good people. Is to have that, have those people around you. And I'll reflect back to you. So I loved that piece of advice. So there was tons. Oh my God, so much, so much good advice and so much interest and perspective there, Jackie. Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting to sit in on. And I wonder if I could have a volunteer, just one volunteer. Okay. Right, we have two. All right. So we have a few. Right, so those of you that have put up your hand. So Jackie has promised us that in maybe 3 or 4 years' time, we're going to see a sitcom on the tellies. So those of you that put up your hand, I want you to make Jackie a promise. What are you going to do?
Good question. Good throwback. Okay, what are you going to do? An achievement.
Yeah, so she's going to write a sitcom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably 3 years. It takes that long.
Gonna kick down doors.
I'm going to find a career that I love and that changes people's lives for the better.
For the better? Good. Okay.
I will probably dedicate more time to storytelling. I've been putting that off for many years now, and writing actually makes me happy, and I really love to go back into it sometime soon.
Brilliant.
And I'll start probably today.
Yay!
And the thing is, you say you've been putting it off. Another good phrase, prevarication is the theft of time. Suddenly, the time's gone. Don't prevaricate.
Any other promises?
I'll finally write an email to the head of the company where I want to get an internship with. I don't know what I'm going to do, just be inside there.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you all very much for coming, and thank you much for your questions. I think the questions that you were asked
bored you
were
rigid.
Oh, not
thank
at
you
all,
for
not
coming.
at all. So thank you to all of you for coming and asking such great questions, and thanks so much, Jackie, for a brilliant hour. That was fantastic. Thank you.